Greetings again, everybody. Welcome back to Dark Souls 2, Crown of the Sunken King. We are today gonna visit the co-op area of this DLC, because every DLC has one area dedicated to being beaten in co-op. You can definitely do it alone, but it's gonna be much harder. Except this DLC's area, which is kind of easy, but the boss blows. It's just bad, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. To access this area, as you can imagine, we need to go through one of the doors that we could not open previously. Actually, there was only one such door, which was right at the beginning of the Dragon Sanctum, right here. Now, this isn't the co-op area yet, but we're getting there. This is still part of the Dragon Sanctum, obviously. And those guys are as... oh, they're there. If you can beat them up close, they're no problem at all. Just look out for when they die, because they might release poison. That's pretty much everything. Oh, there's a ton of treasure here, but nothing really too special. Fairly standard stuff. It's just to give you that feeling that you're actually achieving something, I suppose. After having a couple rooms in this DLC with, well, open chests that had nothing in them. The only thing kind of interesting here is the lightning clutch ring, which adds some lightning damage to your attacks if you equip it. So we've been to the very bottom of this pyramid, and now we're gonna go up top. Oh boy, those guys again. Now, we have just now seen the bridge over to the co-op area. But before we go there, let's actually head up this ladder thing there. Funny how he used it like a regular ladder, but it clearly isn't one. But oh well. Aside from this chest, there's absolutely no reason to come up here, by the way. I mean, there are those two torches you can light. In fact, let's do that. But they don't really do anything, aside from looking pretty from a distance, because you can see them right from that bonfire we can see in the distance there. But yeah. No real reason to actually do that aside from, you know, making it look pretty. Yep, nothing there. So let's just head back down and across that bridge, because that's where we actually want to go now. Of course, I know there's something coming, so I will buff up. Oh boy, my favorite, Red Phantom enemies. This is an NPC invasion. It's nothing too fancy. I said that the DLC invasions are actually pretty fun, but this isn't one of them. And not every invasion is actually unique. But there are some in the future DLCs that are actually much more fun, because they really do act more like actual players would. Though it's heavily scripted, because they will always do certain things if condition X is met, which is how I suppose programming works. But we're getting ahead of ourselves again. we're gonna discuss that once we actually get there. Which will be a while, of course, because we're still hanging out in this DLC. Now, we've been down that elevator shaft before. It is the one right before the entrance to the Dragon Sanctum, so we're not actually gonna go down there. Not worth it. We know what's down there after all. So what we're gonna do is just to rest up and then head into this area here. Friend required add. Well, that's actually pretty good advice. Because I don't really plan on doing this co-op area alone. I've invited people from the thread to join me. Several have expressed interest, but at the time of this recording, only one of them actually had time. Cave of the Dead, alright. So those totem things we see there to the left and the right, we also saw that at the entrance lobby of the DLC. And if you place it at the entrance, the summon sign will appear here as well, so you can access this area at least, even without owning the DLC, because you can still access the lobby. And yep, just summoned Wayne, contributor to the thread. Who's gonna help me through here? Sup? So, this DLC's area isn't too bad difficulty-wise. It's very possible, although slightly tedious, alone. I mean, every area is possible alone, but this is the most quote-unquote fun. I still don't like the area itself. It just features a ton of enemies and, you guessed it, those statues that look like the poison statues only with red eyes, they don't poison you, they petrify you. It's a very slow build-up, so it doesn't really happen usually. But you'll still want to keep that in mind, just to make sure you don't suddenly end up being a statue. So let me use a spell from the DLCs, or not. Fire Snake is actually a pyromancy we can find in the Crown of the Old Iron King DLC. It basically does this. It has a little bit of a homing effect, making it pretty useful, and it can hit multiple targets really easily, though I think it only hit one here. And normally, if I were to do this alone, I would not jump down here right away. We're kind of brute forcing it here. If I were to do it alone, I would just try to snipe people from up above and then head down to kill whoever's left. Most annoying part probably are those, I don't know, bunches of statues that are walking around, I would call them, maybe. Yeah, they're the most annoying parts here. Because, much like with the poison ones, you can't actually attack them, easily at least. You need to attack them at their bottoms. Which sometimes works with regular weapons, but most of the time you'll need to whip out your ranged attacks. And I actually kind of did get lost here, because even though it's a very small area, a lot of it looks very samey. But we're gonna actually make progress shortly. We already picked up everything that is to pick up in this part of the area. This area doesn't really have anything that would benefit from it being a co-op area, by the way, aside from a higher amount of enemies. The other co-op areas, they're better in that regard, but I still don't like the areas themselves, but keep it a secret, please. So yeah, another point of no return right down here. This entire area here is pretty reminiscent of Black Gulch. Not really in the visual sense, but in the gameplay sense. I mean, there are no enemies here like those guys, which are the most hated thing I personally have about them. They're like these regular statues, only so much worse. But we do have some familiar faces as well. But we're gonna take it slow here so we don't have to deal with too many enemies at the same time. Having a helper who is using heavy weapons kind of shows, though, how much harder they actually hit. We're gonna see it later when we fight the boss especially, that Wayne just does way more damage per hit than I do. On the other hand, I have the chance to actually hit multiple times in that same amount of time, and do a little more damage. And yes, this is just a palette swap of those same worms, crawlers, whatever they are, from Black Gulch. They act exactly the same way as far as I can tell. I don't think they have any unique attacks. And this is kind of a trap. Because as soon as you go there, it'll release these petrifying gas, which of course you want to get out of as quickly as you can, otherwise you're probably gonna just be petrified. This is the boss, actually using Sacred Oath's co-op ability here, which basically just means that as long as it's cast, it will also affect friends that are in the game. And this boss is lovingly called the Gang Squad. It's basically just 3 NPCs. I do not like this boss. I'm not sure if you can tell why. It has basically my least favorite enemy type, ×3, with big health bars. This fight isn't really hard if you do it solo though, but very, very tedious, and it requires you to jump down into the water and make it so you have only one of them on your hands at the same time, just to hit them more easily. If you have a buddy though, like I have, it's not much of a problem. I'm still not very careful here, but it does work out. Because healing's always an option. Other than that, there's not really much of a strategy to it, aside from hit them until they die. They have, as far as I can tell, the exact same AI as every other NPC type enemy in the game. And they are modeled after actual characters from within the game, like Varg was Havel, which was a character from the first game. The guy we killed just now, the Afflicted Grave Robber, was dressed like Alva, which is a character from this game, but he's never actually shows up. So this might be actually Alva, we don't know. This one isn't named after all. And that guy, okay, I don't know. This might be Roy the Explorer, only Sierra the Old Explorer. But really, it's hard to tell. I was just gonna assume that all of those are based on some character from the Soul series. This one might be, but I'm not too sure about that one. But it's dead anyway. That was easy enough. The reward for it isn't too bad. The upgrade materials you get are pretty good, but you can get them very easily actually by just, you know, grinding in the good old Dragon Area. But we also get something totally and completely sweet. We get a sweet skirt. Now, when this DLC first came out and people found this, they just assumed that you would get other pieces of this set in the other DLCs. This was completely wrong. It's just a skirt, nothing else. And it doesn't really go with anything. It's a Fashion Soul's nightmare. Alright, this kind of loops us back to the main areas of this DLC. And we're now about done with the DLC, actually. This was the last big area. Big. It was pretty small, actually. But yeah, here we are. Right back down below that bonfire before the Cave of the Dead. Let's just wait for the elevator. And I'll see you next time.